by our Horizon project NBS EduWORLD and is organized by eClay in collaboration with PPMI. So today we're going to have a hybrid event. So we have about 100 participants online as well. And this is, perhaps next slide, is meant to be a quite interactive session. We'll have a bunch of time for breakout rooms, for interactive discussions, and also networking and coffee breaks and lunch. But the first part of our event, we're going to start with, and the first speaker will be Paula Leppery, and please come to the stage. But before I pass the floor to Paula, we're gonna play to you one of the animated videos that NBS EduWORLD produced.
In a world facing unprecedented environmental challenges, the power to ensure a sustainable future lies within our. It's in our hands to shape the way we teach, to enable students with solutions that address these challenges. Nature-based solutions are highly effective measures against climate change disruptions, and they're easy to teach from kindergarten to university, integrating across different subjects. NBS can be green roofs, community gardens, urban forests, and many more. They use ecosystem benefits to adapt to problems such as heat waves, floods, or droughts, while also contributing to our social well-being, the economy, and biodiversity. NBS Education fosters the skills and competencies described in GreenCom, the European Sustainability Competence Framework. Nature-based solutions can be taught inside and outside the classroom, and students can explore through hands-on projects how nature works and the ways we can use it to tackle the most pressing problems of our time. All we need to do now is make NBS education accessible for students. This goal can only be achieved with the support of policymakers. Help us make a lasting impact by integrating NBS education into national curricula and textbooks, by dedicating more funding for hands-on activities, like building a school garden to create green areas and protect biodiversity, and by providing pedagogical guidelines and teacher training opportunities. Education is the key to a sustainable future, and mainstreaming NBS education fosters future innovators to build a resilient society. For more information and to join this transformative endeavor, visit our website. Together, we can plant the seeds for a green tomorrow.
I will just shortly introduce you to Paula, Miss Paula Leppery. Thanks for joining us, and also thanks everyone for joining us today. So Ms. Paula Leppery is a policy officer for nature-based solutions at the European Commission, DG Research and Innovation. And she has a very diverse professional background. Besides, before joining the Biodiversity and Nature-based Solutions team in 2022, she has been working in the field of environment for several years across different DGs, Maritime Affairs and Fisheries, as a communication officer. But also she works as a writer for newspapers, focusing on international affairs, writing depth analysis on current and environmental affairs. So she's passionate by education and children's rights, and this brought her to collaborate with grassroots organizations in the project Amal Osalan. Is this correctly pronounced? Okay, in Syria. So welcome, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's really nice to be here this morning and be with you to talk about education. And I'm going to try and set the scene a little bit and provide a policy overview regarding NBS. And then I will try to provide the R&I a little bit landscape around nature-based solutions and into the why we fund NBS education with the Research Innovation Program. And then I will leave it to my dear colleague, Temer, to say more about education for a green transition to climate neutrality. Next slide, please. So first of all, a very quick timeline around the emergence of the concept of nature-based solutions. So the concept emerged in the late 2000s, first introduced by the World Bank, and the International Union for the Conservation of Nature was very quick in picking it up and championing it. And in time, they produced a global standard. The European Commission was also quite quick to realize the potential of nature-based solutions. And in the early 2010s, we produced our own definition of nature-based solutions, and we started allocating funding to research innovation for nature-based solutions. And then flash forward to 2022, when we finally have the United Nations Environmental Assembly adopting a resolution that defined and framed nature-based solutions. So in the attempt to refine the idea and avoid greenwashing. Next slide, please. This is the resolution that we all know and cherish. I won't read it in the interest of time, and we can go to the next slide, where we start with the policy context. So at the international stage, it's very important that both IPBES and IPCC recognize not only the interconnectedness of the biodiversity and climate change crisis, but also the role of NBS in addressing both of them at the same time. Now, 2022, I go back to that year because it was really a pivotal year for nature-based solutions at the UNFCCC COP27. Nature-based solutions are recognized for the potential to address climate change, and they are included in the implementation plan. But at the same time, Egypt, Germany, and IUCN announced the ENACT initiative for nature-based solutions. Then a few months later, at the Biodiversity COP15, nature-based solutions are fully embedded in the global biodiversity framework. And I will say more about that later. But what is not on the slide is that there are 3 Rio conventions, and nature-based solutions are included in the 3rd convention as well, the Desertification Convention. If you read the 2nd Global Land Outlook, they really recognize the role of NBS, and especially there is a technical brief on the role of NBS for fighting droughts. Next slide, please. Yes, the Global Biodiversity Framework, as you know, is extremely important. And it basically provides a set of 23 targets for very urgent action until 2030. So basically in the next 5-6 years, we're getting there very, very fast. And these 3 targets that I highlighted here are the ones that are particularly relevant for nature-based solutions. You have Target 8 about minimizing the impacts of climate change on biodiversity and building resilience. Target 11 about restoring and maintaining and enhancing nature's contributions to people. And Target 12 about enhancing green spaces and urban planning for human well-being and biodiversity. Now, if you're familiar with these targets, Target 12 doesn't explicitly mention nature-based solutions, but it's fair to say that when they look at green and blue spaces in urban planning, this is what they're talking about, nature-based solutions. Next slide, please. The EU policy landscape. So I think it's fair to say that the European Green Deal, which was launched in 2019 with the first mandate of the von der Leyen Commission, has gone really a long way in mainstreaming nature-based solutions into the European policy landscape. And here I have a few key examples. The adaptation strategy, as you know, incorporates nature-based solutions as a key instrument for systemic adaptation. Then the EU biodiversity strategy, of course, has an entire section dedicated to nature-based solutions. And what I find personally very interesting is that it highlights the role of nature-based solutions in providing economic and jobs opportunities. Then we have, finally, I have to say, the nature restoration regulation. It was a bit of drama around this landmark piece of legislation, but we finally have it. It entered into force last month. We're very proud of it. And if you read especially the preamble of the law, it's all about nature-based solutions to achieve basically all of its targets. But then you have the EU Renovation Wave, for example, and it talks about incorporating nature-based solutions in the built environment, extremely important. You have the Farm to Fork strategy and the new approach for a sustainable blue economy. They talk about incorporating nature-based solutions in the respective sectors. You have, of course, the urban nature plans, formerly known as urban greening plans, and a lot of other policy and regulatory documents mention nature-based solutions across sectors. Next slide, please. But yes, this mandate has come to an end almost, and there will be a second mandate for the von der Leyen Commission. You know that now the commissioners have been selected. They're going to have to go through hearings, and we will see what will be the final shape of the new College of Commissioners. But we can already get a glimpse of the future by looking at the new political guidelines. And what you see here on my slide is actually my own reading of these political guidelines. And for me, the very first and very important point is that we do not backtrack on the European Green Deal. It stays where it is. Now we focus on implementing the objectives of the European Green Deal. And also we have to uphold our international commitments, including the Global Biodiversity Framework. Now, the very first priority of the new Commission will be sustainable prosperity and competitiveness. So you see there is a little bit of a shift in narrative at the policy and political level. And the President has promised that within the first 100 days, they will deliver, or we will deliver, a clean industrial deal to channel investment in infrastructure and industry. And here the bit that I want to highlight is that there will be a proposal to enshrine the 90% emission reduction target in the climate law. And then the second promise is to deliver a new strategy for agriculture and food. And you probably know that there's been a very inclusive dialogue about the future of agriculture. That deliver a report very recently. Now, where do I see opportunities for NBS? Maybe I'm naive and creative as well, but I see opportunities all around the political guidelines. In agriculture, for sure, and I was very happy to hear the President say the farmers are making huge efforts to contribute to the green transition, for instance, through nature-based solutions, because to me, it means that we're gonna try and mainstream nature-based solutions in agriculture even more. We're going to have a new climate adaptation plan, obviously a huge opportunity for nature-based solutions. We're going to have a new European water resilience strategy. Again, nature-based solutions for water resilience, very, very important. This is probably a little bit less obvious, but the new European Affordable Housing Plan is meant to be also a sustainable housing plan. And this means it's obviously linked with the Social Climate Fund and the new European Bauhaus, but this means another entry point to mainstream nature-based solutions in the built environment, in our cities, in our infrastructures. And then there is a renewed emphasis on tackling skills and labor gaps, and this is where NBS education comes into play. Next slide, please. Yes, now we can look at the R&I landscape. Okay, this is not a great use of a PowerPoint slide, I'm afraid, but what I was trying to do was providing an overview of the NBS projects that we've been funding throughout the years. And the figures that you see there are actually outdated because they picture the state of play of 1 year ago. And at that time, we had counted 76 projects with an investment of over 665 million euros, about 1,400 partners, and over 70 countries involved in these projects. These figures are impressive, I think. And as I said, they're outdated because there are new projects that have started. We have put more money into nature-based solutions, research innovation. There are more partners joining this beautiful family of NBS projects. And what is very important to highlight is that these projects, they cover a range of challenges and landscapes that is truly, truly impressive. And next slide, please. And it's also very important to recall that nature-based solutions play a huge role in the European missions. And if you're not familiar with them, the European missions were designed to provide concrete solutions on the ground. So in a way, they go beyond research innovation. In terms of budgets, they really table considerable money because, you know, to build a demonstrator, you need a considerable investment. And many opportunities have come up with the European missions, and other with the new European Bauhaus. And you will see that next year, the new work program of Horizon Europe will incorporate a section dedicated to the new European Bauhaus, and opportunities for NBS are sure to appear in there as well. Next slide, please. Finally, NBS in education. Why we fund nature-based solutions education? It's actually pretty banal. Our end goal is transformative change, and education is a stepping stone for transformative change. It sounds obvious, and it's probably obvious in this room, and for the people online, it's probably less obvious in other sectors. And then the other reason is that nature-based solutions are also a key part of transformative change. But we cannot mainstream nature-based solutions if we don't build the skills, but also the culture, the mindsets for nature-based solutions to scale up. So what we did upon this realization was launching a pilot study in 2020. It was called Educational Innovation Around Nature-Based Solutions, and it was basically a compilation of learning scenarios that teachers around Europe worked on. And it was very beautiful that these teachers were invited to an awards ceremony. And the event was called Let Nature Be the Solution, which I personally find very beautiful. And that was really the beginning, because 1 year later, we put in the work program this topic here. I'm going to find my notes and read what we wanted to get out of it. So what we had in mind with that topic was developing learning scenarios, formal and informal education activities, and training programs for teachers to mainstream biodiversity and NBS in education at all levels and in a broad range of disciplines. So there you go. In 2022, NBS EduWORLD was born, and I was lucky enough to be there at the kickoff meeting and to present a little bit our reasoning for that topic. But then in 2023, we went a little bit further, and we wanted to develop and disseminate concrete guidance for higher education institutions, targeting vocational training, universities, and technical schools for greater involvement with citizens and professional organizations to mainstream biodiversity and NBS into their learning, teaching, and capacity building programs. And in 2024, Enables was launched, and we have the project advisor here to represent this other beautiful project that is a little bit younger. And then other NBS projects among the 76 that I showed in the previous slide have undertaken educational activities, because, you know, NBS projects are by nature very transdisciplinary, and education is an important component for every one of them. Next slide, please. So back to NBS EduWORLD, the overall objective of this project is to really nurture an NBS literate society and support a just transition to a sustainable future, as we have heard. And to this end, NBS EduWORLD is creating a community that facilitates synergies, changes between practitioners and education providers. And the ultimate goal is really easy and free access to these resources. And this is in a nutshell why we're here today. This is what the Education Summit is about. Next slide, please. But I also wanted to recall that we have a task force on NBS education that is led by NBS EduWORLD. And it's really beautiful because the task forces basically bring together these projects on NBS, and they allow these projects to collaborate on horizontal areas of interest. And the results are pretty impressive. Over the years, we have produced a lot of very interesting material, and the Task Force on Education is pretty new, but I know that it's going to deliver some pretty interesting material. Next slide, please. And this is, of course, all part of Network Nature, and some of you were at the Network Nature annual event yesterday. It's really a very tiny community that has learned to work together in a very productive way and delivers an impressive range of resources. So if you're not familiar with Network Nature yet, I really encourage you to explore the resources that they provide. Next slide, please. But the landscape is even broader because we have OPLA, the EU Repository of Nature-Based Solutions. We work pretty closely with Biodiversa Plus, which is the European Biodiversity Partnership. They have a BioDiv Clean Knowledge Hub that is basically dedicated to nature-based solutions. And they launched, I think in September last year, a call on NBS research. And I think they just launched another one on transformative change. So you see, we're all talking about the same things. And as I mentioned before, some projects have delivered education resources, and you have a list there. I think the slides can be circulated so you can explore a little bit more. And I think this was my last slide. So with this, I thank you again for listening to me. I hope it was not too overwhelming and dull. I'm looking forward to the conversations that we're going to have today. And once again, we're investing in these projects because we believe education is an important piece of this puzzle, and we cannot, reach our goals without including education and the education community. So thank you again.
Many thanks for setting the scene for us and showing us a bit of the policy and research innovation landscape. We will leave the questions and answers for after all the speakers, if that's fine. And then I would invite now, if you could go back to the bank, because I don't have enough chairs, unfortunately. Yes, I would invite Tremor and Madeleine. I hope you don't mind that I'm calling you by your first names without misspelling it, because I'm Brazilian, it's kind of my way, but I can correct this if it's. Thank you. Yeah. Just when you have the presentation, sure, yeah. How is this possible, right? To have the share the presentation. Just one small logistical thing. Can you check how we could turn on the aircon, because I think it'll get hot pretty soon.
I will check
because I needed to close the window. Thanks. Are you prepared to sleep? To sleep number wise.
We are sleeping towards the winter, so for me, I like this.
Okay, yeah.
But okay. It's your turn.
All right, so I would first introduce Tremor, and then when I pass the floor to Cornelia, I would then introduce you if you don't mind, right? So thanks for joining us, for accepting this invitation. Tremor Deikot is teacher by training, as you can see there, and worked in different countries and schooling systems for almost 20 years. And he's now he has been a policy officer for the last 10 years and working currently as an education expert at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission in the Education for Climate Coalition team to help bring sustainability into teaching and learning and adapt the education system to the green transition. So thanks for once more.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So the floor is yours.
Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very glad to be here, and congratulations for your excellent work. So I'm going to try to explain what the EU is doing for what regards education that should be at least in transition. I'm going to try to explain that. Basically, what I'm trying to do here is to convey three key messages, I should say. The first one, I think after the presentation we've just heard, it's quite clear. There are reasons to rejoice because there are a lot of things happening. So the trend is very positive. That being said, there are also reasons not to despair because we don't want to despair and there is no need to despair, but certainly to work hard still. There is still a lot of things to do. And I will try to explain the sort of thing we need to do. The second message, which is linked to that one, which is how can we work together to have a greater impact? And this is definitely something we have to do. We have to learn from each other. There's a lot to do to increase our impact, to understand what's working, what's not working. It's also to base our policies on evidences, which is not always the case when it comes to education. And then the last thing, which is really a key message, I want to talk about in particular NBS. I want to talk in particular about, I don't know, using more bags when you go to schools or things like that. What I'm going to talk about, because that's what we are talking about when we talk about NBS, is that we're talking about transformative education. The thing is that at the moment, in most of the cases, education systems, the way they work, don't give us the possibility really to apply the ambitions we have, which is a bit of an issue. So let's start. This just to give you an overview of various actions that are being led by the European Commission. As it was explained before, which is absolutely true, the big game changer for us at EU level was the Green Deal. That's absolutely key. You know that education for sustainable development is not something new, of course. We've been talking about that with UNESCO for now almost 40 years. There was a year decade on education for sustainable development. Did that change really when you talk to people from UNESCO? So sometimes, I mean, these people, they've got a lot of courage and they tell it to you because they say, you know, we've been saying things, repeating things, but then to turn that into concrete actions and to see education system changing, well, it's a struggle, and that's true, it's still a struggle. So the Green Deal was a game changer for sure, because there was an impetus, if you want, at EU level that for sure had some sort of impact. The pandemic was also a big game changer, I must say, for education. So I've been lucky enough to witness that because I'm working on that program now for almost 4 years. And I've witnessed during that period of time an explosion of activities. So there is a sort of awakening, if you want, at last, especially in education ministries, where they say, oops, we should do something, which is very good. So what we're doing here is that we're doing what the European Commission is doing. So basically, we don't have that many instruments that we can use. So we use first a political instrument, which is the most important one, really. On the left, there was a council recommendation. That was also something very interesting. The first document ever where we had member states around the table saying, yes, green education should be a priority. So you will tell me, rightly, it's a recommendation, it's not binding. Yes, it's true. They can sit on it, but at least it exists. And they commit normally to these priorities, which is an excellent news. Very interesting document, by the way. You know it, I know, in that audience. If you don't, take a bit of your time to have a look. Okay, you will tell me it's a bit of a boring document. Yes, but not only, because it's not just about investment, priorities, etc. It's also about how, or the sort of thing we should do when it comes to education, the very act of teaching, to deliver what we try to do in terms of green education. And then you understand that it's also about what I was talking before, which is transformative education. If I'm teaching, I used to be a teacher, you said that. So I've been teaching in different education systems, various countries, and I've been watching the same thing every time. In most of the cases, I see a teacher, I'm sorry to say something that might seem a bit of a caricature, but that's what I've witnessed. You see a teacher talking and you see students listening. And of course, that can work. That's exactly what I'm doing here today. So you're going, I hope, to learn something, and you're going certainly to grasp some of the knowledge I'm going to share with you, just a bit of it. And then for most of it, you will anyway forget it. If I want to change, really, to change you in a way, and to develop your competences, and I'm using here the definition as it comes in GreenComp, which is knowledge, skills, and attitudes, I might have to do something a different way. So, interesting document. Of course, the GreenComp, that's a key document, really. So, methodological tool in order to have a common understanding of what we're talking about when we're talking about green competences. And we need that, definitely. Education for climate coalition, that the program in charge of, so I will explain. Working groups, very important working groups for my colleagues from DGIC, B2 unit, where it focuses on schools, just schools. But at least there we've got people working from all the member states together, trying to share what they're doing in order to find better solutions together. We are delivering some white papers that are very interesting, if you're interested in schools in particular. Same thing on vocational education training, which is a very important one, of course. If we want to green the workforce, as Draghi was saying recently, and he's right. Research, we definitely need more research because we need to base what we're doing on evidences. I'm personally tired to see people still doing things when we know for a fact that it does not work, which is amazing. And it comes sometimes from ministries, I'm sorry to say, because I see that. Horizon Europe and Erasmus Plus financial instruments are absolutely key in order to develop amazing Erasmus projects such as yours. So I don't want to be too long, so I will go very fast in my slides. Next slides, please. So it's an example. That's a compendium that has been done on vocational training. Interesting, you see there are 57 examples across the 9 themes, 20 countries. What do we learn there? Next slide. We learned that, for instance, which is an interesting one. So it was a questionnaire to the working group members, and they were asking them, so which of the following statements is most accurately reflects the situation in your country with regard to how green skills are implemented, in fact, because the understanding. And there's no shared understanding of green skills, but the first one that comes. But that is from 2022. Okay, second slide. So that's my thing. Reason to rejoice, reason to still keep doing things. In your country, what's the situation with regard to the inclusion of common or core green elements in VET programs, so vocational education training programs in curricula? Core green elements are in the process of being developed. That's the first one. And the second one is are included in VET programs. So that's good. It means that it's coming to curricula. Not all of them, but it's coming. Good. Next slide, please. That over research. Next. That's an interesting one. It's a very recent one, a EDC report, because at least we've got an overview of what's happening in the EU. And we learn a lot there. Next slide, please. So, of course, they start from the beginning. So we have to agree on that, which is the fact that we want to strengthen the sustainability competences. And we have to do that by force in a holistic way. Sustainability is something which is transversal. What about having a key competence on sustainability? The decision was to say, no, we don't need it because sustainability is everywhere, which is also why it's so tricky when you have organizations that are organized in silos, which is the case for most of the education ministries. Teachers and school leaders need to receive appropriate training. So it's the same thing. That's the key instrument, the key lever. As soon as you want to change something in education, you've got to train the teachers. Is it being done? I will show you what it is. Learning for sustainability requires a whole institution approach, of course. So next slide, please. That's an interesting one. You see that you can turn that title because you say, oh, half of the education system sets sustainability-related learning objectives for teacher education programs. Very good, which means that half of them are not doing it. And when you see, for instance, you can look at the figures anyway. I will share the slides with you because I will be too long. So second, next slides, please. Support for whole school approach to sustainability is widespread. So it's not the case everywhere, but almost in all the system. That's a very good thing because that's the only way really we want to embed sustainability in the education system. If you don't have a whole school approach, it just won't work. I'm very caricatural, but I give you an example. I tend to compare sustainability to democracy. If you want to have citizens that become Democrats, you won't have to, in your education, to say, okay, we're going to open a course on democracy, and that will be it. Democracy is supposed to be normally to thrive at all levels of that school, of education system. Same thing has to happen with sustainability. Don't know if my comparison works, but next slide. That's an interesting one, especially for you. This is based on Greencom, of course, and they analyzed how the competences, if they were present or not in the curricula. And you see that when it comes to promoting nature, it's quite good. There's something a bit missing, and I think it's a very interesting one because as a teacher, I can assure you that's a tricky one. It's future literacy. How do we teach the students, whatever level, to tell the truth, even higher education? How do we promote their future literacy to be able to anticipate? That's a key one to my view. And we still have a lot to do there. Next one. So that's an interesting one. Individual action also, you know, Green Comp focus on individual action and collective action. The fact is, that's a bit sad to see, but this is come from their report. They say teachers are inclined to emphasize individual actions in the private sphere in relation to action-related competences, which means that still there, we need to do something for what we got collective action, which is a key competence to my view when it comes to sustainability. Next slide. So it's a bit a long one, I'm sorry. The type of slide as a teacher I should never do because you can read it, of course, a lot of words, but you will read it when I will share it with you. It's interesting because it's a bit still my approach saying there are very good things, and that report shows it at the very beginning. We can rejoice about the fact that there are positive development in embedding learning for sustainability in school education, but there are still things to do. If you see there, for instance, that one, financial or non-financial support for specific school activities are less common. So teachers still need support. And then, which is something which is important for us as people working in policy field, we tend to think that things are being done when the policy is there. Same thing happened with curricula. We say, oh, it's in the curriculum. But we forget that that has got to be turned into reality concretely, where the learning happens. And there's a long way between these two. So that's what the report is clearly telling us, which is why I think it's interesting. I want to finish because I will be too long. Erasmus, you know that. I will skip my slide. Double the funding, very good. It's also focused on green. You've got the Teachers Academy. You've got Green Comp, you know that, which is very good. It's translated in all official languages, which is very good. Next slide, please. So you know that one, which is Green Comp. The next slide. Now I will focus for the last of the end of my presentation of communities. So if you're interested in green competences, join the Green Comp community. Next slide. Sorry, because I'm going very fast. If you join that community, you will be able to talk with experts also, such as, for instance, the one who led that very interesting research on implementation of cases of Green Comp. We need to have around the table what we have today, I guess, which is people coming from the policy world, who will be the one normally who will design the policies and implement them. We need to have researchers, definitely, and we need to have practitioners. This is what a community of practice is about. We also have the same thing. Community of practice becomes a buzzword, but it's not easy to put in place because you need to manage such a community. You need to go and bring these people around the table to say, we have to work together. We have to have people in ministries and policy officers that are very much in touch with practitioners to see what they need and if what they're doing is really implemented in concrete actions. But the practitioners also themselves, they've got to understand what's coming from the top because they might have an impact, of course, on these policies. It seems obvious what I'm saying again, but it's not that easy to put in place. So that's what we're trying to do with, next slide, please. The Education for Climate Coalition, we did a game also on Green Comp. Next slide, please. So that's it. Education for Climate is a community of practice. So now, maybe I will share the next slide immediately. Next slide, please. Yes, that's it. So concretely, that one is very good. There are figures, so that you understand. So we've been developing that from scratch. Now for 3 years. It exists really online since 2.5 years. When I say online, because there's an instrument, of course, to give us the possibility to work together. So don't get me wrong, Community of Practice is not an online platform. The online platform is an instrument for that community of practice to exist. We need to do exactly what we're doing today, which is to meet. That's what we're doing online a lot, but we need to meet and engage in a proper conversation. But we need also to have that conversation happening on a permanent way with an online platform. We've got that. We have 8,000 people now. It's interesting to see these people because they are very different people. If you can go back to the slide on the figures, please, the blue one, the next one. No, the next one or next one. That's it. You are, oops, the one with the figures. So you have educators, this is the majority. You have education stakeholders, so this means a lot of people coming from, of course, NGOs, associations, etc. You've got hundreds of people coming from administrations. You've got scientists, because yes, scientists are very, very worried about what's happening in education, and if it's not the case, they should, because we need them. That's absolutely key. And we together, we are engaging in a conversation, which is basically we share news, we share information, and then we try to co-work together. So it might seem obvious, it's not, believe me. Also because here again, we got to change behaviors. Your behaviors, my behaviors. First reaction, when you do something, you go on Twitter and you share, for instance, about your event. And you're very happy because you say, I'm done. My communication service has done what we had to do. Yeah. Are you sure about the impact of your tweet? Not sure about that. You've got to build up an audience. The audience is there. If you're interested to share something with people who are, for a fact, interested in your stuff, go in that platform. You've got 8,000 people there who are potentially interested in green education. So use it. And let's engage in a conversation. I stop here because I will be too long. I will go to the next slide and tell you that you can do whatever you want because on that platform, it's your community. So you get to feel fully empowered for sure. And that community will become what we want it to be. But we also can, if you go back to the precedent slide, please, we can also meet on a frequent basis. We do what we call community cafes, green camp cafes, that one. So for instance, the next one is on 25 September. We'll talk about nature-based solution. Green camp cafe is on October. Next slide, please. You can also, if you're interested, you can see the talks I'm doing. For instance, I'm interviewing experts from all over the world so that they can share with us their news, their programs, their ideas, their experience. Good people there. I met people, amazing people who've been working in that for 2 years and who are still, willing to change things. Amazing, really. And the next one, which is my last word, and I stop here. You can, of course, have a bulletin with your newsletter. The next one, I invite you to join our flagship event of that flagship initiative of the European education area on the, I didn't put the date, so it's there, on November 28th. I'm sorry, I should have put it. And it's an occasion also for you to meet other members, a lot certainly interested also in nature-based solutions. So welcome. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Remo. I think it was a lot of food for thought for our discussions later. So I hope that we can go beyond this bank education format that we are in the moment. I'm using an expression from Paulo Freire, an educator from Brazil, because I found very provocative, and I do think it's important that we go beyond this format of presenting and listening, and we will have the opportunity to discuss further. So you brought a lot of good provocations, insightful messages, and also important resources that we can discuss later in our breakout groups. Thanks a lot for that.
Yeah.
And then now I would pass the word for Cornelia Madalena Suta. I'm reading from my paper. So Dr. Cornelia Madalena Suta is a principal economist at Cambridge Econometrics that is based here in Belgium, specializing in European and global economic and social policy analysis. She holds a degree in economics from the Bucharest Academy of Economic Studies and a PhD in agri-environmental economics from the University of Kent. She had led several projects on skills development, the future of work, and employment trends, including work for the CEDAFOP, the ILO, and GIZ. Her recent projects have focused on the impact of green, digital, and care economies, and she's currently working on the ILO 2024 report on decent work in nature-based solutions. And we have read a bit on the, just a compliment, on the former report on decent work, and this was what motivated us to invite Ms. Cornelia Madalena Suta to join, also that we can see this from a different perspective, from the perspective also of the decent work, the labor market, the skills that are needed, also considering both aspects of the transformative change that education can bring, but also the aspect of the sustainable prosperity that I think we heard also from Paula on when she brought the new perspective, the future perspective in the European landscape, right? So please, Cornelia, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. It's good to be here and to complement what Remar said, because I'm coming after what happens to education. So after education comes work. And work is financed by what Paula said, all the money that is put by the European Union and all the other institutions. So I'll discuss exactly things about employment, future employment, current employment, but also I'll try to give some insights into the future skills needs so that the education system can provide them. I can tell you already that many of the skills are already present. So I think just as Remar said, people don't know about them. They don't know what green skills means. They might have them, that they don't know that they have them. And then they hear the buzzword green skills and they have no clue that they can actually apply for that job because they think they don't have a green skill. So as Priscilla was saying, Cambridge Econometrics helped the ILO and UNDP in their first report on decent work and nature-based solution. This was published 2 years ago, I think, in the Montreal event. And it was the first of its kind. And now they are going to publish every 2 years. And we are working now on the 2024 one. It should be available it will be published in the Saudi event. So what we have done there, it was very challenging because data does not exist. So first, employment in NBS was supposed to be defined, and this is what ILO and UNDP tried to do in this report. And we, as Cambridge Econometrics, came to put some numbers to their definition. So there are 3 types of employment in NBS. NBS, which is direct NBS, of what you're working as a nature-based solution, but then is also NBS generated work. So you are working in a sector who provides services to somebody who works in NBS, and this is basically indirect kind of work. And then there is the induced ones, because we are working in an economy, so any employment that then is generated somewhere in the economy generates income for those people, and those people go and spend it someplace else. And then basically, so every work that we generate in nature-based solution has impact worldwide. And this is true for any kind of work, but this is kind of where you're saying as well that sustainability is all over, because if we are putting it in one place, then it will generate effects also in other places as well. But work in nature-based solution is not necessarily decent, and that's the reason why we cannot always call the jobs in nature-based solution as green jobs, because if you know the ILO definition of green jobs says that they have to be decent, apart from also the parts related to the environment. Next slide, please. So what was the challenges? It was very difficult because, of course, there's no database on data set on employment. So we had to estimate it based on what existing information were out there. Also, there's no unique source of information. So the most, let's say, comprehensive data set that we have found is something which is called SFN report, is UNDP report on nature. So it's financing nature, basically. And this it's also a report that we publish, I think, every 2 years. And this was the only data that we found on investment or expenditure that is put in nature-based solution. And we got also information from ILO, who gathered from their members what kind of public employment spending is done, because there are parts of the world where specifically employment is created for nature-based solution. And then there were other projects out there, like the barometer, restoration barometer. So we tried to pull together information from all over the place to try to say, okay, this is NBS expenditure. And then that expenditure can be spent by the sector. So the sector themselves decides to do a nature-based solution, or it could be done by the government. So the government also through donors invest money in the economy. And this basically, through this one, we brought it to a macroeconomic model. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but basically, we try to make the link between how much money is invested and how many jobs you can generate with this money. It's not a perfect solution. We are aware that we are underestimating, but this is the best it can be found in the absence of more data. So also, in order to translate it, because we had a macroeconomic model, so we had to translate nature-based solution into economic sector. And it was not as easy because it's not a one-to-one match. So we did as best as we could. Okay, so what are the results that we found in 2022? We looked at both current expenditure that was we knew that was spent, but also expenditure that was in the future. So in the future, they are already, so it is the European Union, they are other states of the world who are also putting forward how much they're going to invest in the future. And this generates the employment. As you can see, the bar that is blue, it's actually the current employment that we could estimate based on the expenditure. And it's much more because we have, we say that we have 75 million people, but they're actually much more than that, that are either in NBS directly or employment generated as an indirect effect of NBS activities or induced. So all three together, it makes up this number. And that is around 2% of the global employment. Why the high bar in Asia and the Pacific is because there they have a lot of public employment activities which generates employment, and most of it comes from India. There's a huge program in which they have nature-based solutions. I think is the biggest program that is out there, and this generates the most current employment in 2022. But I can tell you that is the same in 2024. On the other side, Europe and other European countries actually have very little. We have estimated around 500,000 of employment generated by NBS. Maybe it's more, can you stay on that slide, please? Okay, thank you. And then what happens in the future? In the future, we have future expenditure that it was set forward, and it will generate around 20 million above the current levels. But when we say current levels, we don't mean public employment programs, because those are by year, and none of them are announced in the future. So we don't have in 2030 what will be the public employment programs in the future. And that's why this 20 million that is above current employment is, you should not consider in 20 million above 75 million. It's actually just 20 million above very little. Okay, we can go next. Okay, so what are the skills needs? So I was mentioning the three types of NBS employment. So the one that is direct, like it could be agriculture and forestry, because you're doing reforestation, you're doing restoration of biodiversity, and this is direct employment in the sector. But also this direct employment sometimes, or the NBS solution that you're choosing might require investment elsewhere. You have to buy cars, you have to buy IT equipment, you have to buy excavator. So you have to buy basically from construction and manufacturing. And this happens one time, right? So you do it once, because you do this investment, you bought it, this investment generates employment elsewhere. So And these people who basically are employed here and they are generating income, then they go and spend it. In Europe, actually, most of the NBS employment happens in public administration because our government entities who are actually driving reforestation, who are driving restoration, that happens. So what kind of occupations do you need? Well, the occupations that are already present in the sectors. We're not going to define new ones. And you have almost the same person as agriculture inspector, but maybe for NBS solution, an agriculture inspector would do just slightly different the job that they would normally do for any other activity. So they would just need something like advice on soil and water protection. So they would need this skill compared to for other, let's say, other job. The same would be for forestry inspector. They would do environmental surveys. They would try to say, okay, we need to restore this forest because we have done a forest. So it doesn't require much from what we currently have in terms of occupations. You just need to give them some information on environmental legislation, information on how to apply the latest sustainable practices. And Tremor was talking about education, and yes, we have to educate first our educators that they need to already start teaching them the latest practices, not practices that were in agriculture and forestry that were done 20 years ago. But basically the curriculum needs to be updated every year to include the latest practices. There's no point in teaching them something that is old and then telling them now on the job market, they are asking you to apply this one, and the person says, I don't know it because I was not taught, so I'm not going to apply for the job and I'm going to be jobless. So it really doesn't matter. So, and then the skills that you need is everybody basically needs skills related to new practices, to understand what are the environmental concerns, and also some sort of knowledge on the environmental legislation. And we can go to the conclusions. Thank you. So what do we need? From my point of view as an economist, and to do this kind of estimation, I need more data and I need better quality data. So we need to monitor where the expenditure goes and on what, to be able to understand also if we want better labor, we need to understand how much money is spent of the investment, how much is spent on wages or on other parts of employment. And NBS activities are already part of the existing sectors. So, but the problem is that many of the jobs in NBS are part-time. And I already mentioned that they are not decent. So they are not necessarily offering them job security, good wages, or good working conditions. And then what can basically education system can do? Well, that's the thing, is like they need to be changing the curricula and to actually telling them which this is the green skills that I'm telling you. I'm teaching you about agricultural sustainable practice. This is a green skill, and name it. Tell the person that you're giving them this is green skill. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Cornelia. I think also I was taking some notes, and I see a lot of interesting overlaps, perhaps with the work that TCD is doing inside NBS EduWORLD. Perhaps you have the opportunity later to talk to Connor on that. And I also see a strong dialogue with this agenda of the nature positive economy. I think we have some representatives here at the Go Nature Positive project, or we had at least people that were assigning to take part of the event, perhaps online. So I think it's also a very interesting opportunity. I felt quite disturbed when I heard, and I appreciate that you brought this to the table, that not necessarily NBS jobs are not necessarily green jobs. And I think we really need to pay attention more into this at work part, and also think how education systems can better integrate green skills and make the people who are getting their professional certificates understand that these are really green skills that they can then show to the market, right? Well, thanks a lot for bringing that. I hope this was also quite interesting for you. So that we bring another perspective into the education agenda. And we are quite behind schedule.
Yes, with 10 minutes delay.
10 minutes delay. Could we open 5 minutes for questions and answers,
Yeah.
please?
Just have a shorter break.
Yeah. 5 to 10 minutes.
I have a question for you, Cornelia. Thank you very much for your presentation. I fully agree with everything you said. But I have a point here. You say we need to know how much it costs, how much is spent for NBS. But in fact, here we all agree in the room. But we are, as Paola said, in the phase of implementing the Green Deal, and we have some enemies around the corner. So in fact, what is super important is also to say what are the benefits, what we get through that, not just what we spend, because that's a little issue that we are having in this implementation phase. And I wonder, are you going to look at that? What are the benefits, or are you focusing on what is done, so what is spent?
In macroeconomic terms, what is spent generates benefits.
Yes,
But unless you have a way to capture, unless you can capture directly the benefits, and sometimes they are intangible benefits that you cannot tell. Let's say it's easier to identify first what is spent, and then you can associate what is spent with the benefits. But with just saying these are going to be the benefits, without saying how much it would cost. If you tell somebody, I'm going to give you the best or the tastiest tomato possible, they will say, who is going to say no? Nobody's going to say no. But then when you tell them the price, then they might react a bit differently if they're going to buy the tastier tomato or not. I agree with you that the benefits are really important, but in kind of economic terms, these benefits are spread, right? So what you're generating benefits here, you generate benefits elsewhere, and there is a circle. You might not necessarily need to know how much is spent and where, but if you want to monitor how decent is jobs in NBS, you need to work also on how much money you give them, so the adequate wage, sorry. And then this is expenditure, right? So there are things that you need to monitor them in monetary terms. And NBS is a good activity where labor is still more important than capital for now.
Can you translate that a little bit?
It's labor intensive. It's more labor intensive. So you still need people to do manual work. You need more people to do manual work. You can't just go put a tractor and do like it's conventional agriculture and go with 100 tractors on a field. This requires still restoration activities, requires more manual work. Then you need capital investments, so investment in machineries. You can't just bring the machinery there. Of course, in the future, this kind of restoration would be also done with AI, with the help of AI and the new technology. So but they would still require, until we're going to get robots who can fine touch, it still require more people than normal where you destroy something. So when you need to destroy something, you go with a bulldozer, right? So you need equipment. But in NBS activity, it's still, for now, it's still requiring quite a lot of manual. So we need still people. And then if you want to create decent jobs, you have to pay them, you have to give them good working conditions, and so on.
I'm curious about the definition of your emphasis on decent jobs, and in particular in the context of a growing sector like this is, and a distinction between formal employment and informal one. In the sector that you're talking about, there's a huge importance in part-time labor, volunteerism, and I guess I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about not just the emphasis on the idea of decent labor, but how we grow into a future that might have more decent labor while we currently exist in an atmosphere of more informality and participation in things like community gardens and so on. And maybe it's also a question about scale, of how we might also be able to emphasize and encourage things that happening at small scales, which are going to be more populated with people who are working in the informal sector. So I'm not to say that the decency part is not important, but I'm also curious about a growing movement that will, in that growth period, will involve informality and indecent jobs. Not really the right way to say it, but the jobs that aren't decent in the definition of the job.
Can I just add that? I think, yeah, there is an important component of this volunteer work, so to speak, of the community cohesion, the well-being that they gain from this, also in the transformative change, right? Because it's this importance of the non-formal education also to bring transformative change. And yeah, maybe it's a way to put, not all volunteer work is non-decent work. Or not all volunteer, maybe the right word wouldn't be work then in this case, I don't know.
It will be non-paid.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, according to the ILO definition, they should be informal contracts, they should be paid, and they should be getting adequate wage, not only paid, adequate wage, and get good working conditions. So in terms of working hours and other aspects. It is a challenge. I admit that it is a challenge, but this is coming back to the question that was before on the expenditure would be, okay, let's see on the money that is put forward, for example, for this investment that will be done by 2030. Okay, how much are these, the people who are putting forward the money, the donors, how much do they emphasize the fact that we want to generate formal employment out of this? We want you to get somebody on a contract, or at least they have job security for 3 months. They know they're going to get their job, how much they're going to earn, going to get security. And so you emphasize this kind of aspect of the employment, a bit like they're doing with the Horizon Europe projects. I did my PhD under Horizon FP7 back then. But it was basically, it was research money who also paid me to do my PhD. And so I'm not saying that it was decent back then, but I think that there could be restrictions like this into saying, we do give you investment money into for restoration, or we don't money, but we want to see that you have taken care of the component related to labor. Because it's true, I mean, most of them, they will get very little money. They want to do this project. They want to show to the donors that they got the results, but they would not, they would rely on whoever comes daily to work for that, to do the digging, right? They will not emphasize the part of, we need to make sure that these people get a contract, or they are put into the, I don't have a solution, but there are ways around it where you can make conditional, the donor can make conditional that formal employment is generated even for a short period of time.
Just a short question. I was wondering which NBS definition was applied to identify the NBS expenditure, because I know it has been probably a very critical steps, no, because there are lots of how to say, false solutions, which can be green, but maybe do not address a societal challenge, such as benefiting the community, or reforestation. But okay, if it's like monoculture, is it really, yes? How did you?
We relied on the basically the definition that was from the sources who provided the data. And we checked this with ILO. So ILO and UNDP, they are also present in the other report, which is State of Finance report. And they basically, the State of Finance report also has a definition of NBS. We are actually working by NBS archetype, not necessarily NBS activities. So it's just a group of different NBS activities in there.
The report was still open for contribution, wasn't it? For
Which one?
this 2024 report on decent work in NBS, at least for 2 months ago, I think it was open. I was wondering if people would like also to contribute on that.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Maybe for the next edition.
Yeah, perhaps, yeah. I see there are some questions also in the online.
Yes, there are some questions. One is from Costantina from Italy. Do you think this is right that the green economy relies heavily on voluntary work? Another one would be from Jordan. Is the EU financing PhD students on NBS? Would like to have more information on that.
I think the last one is not clear.
So it's for the last one, there are opportunities here and there in the various EU programs, from Erasmus Plus to, the ERC component of Horizon Europe. But you have to find the right opportunity. There is no specific call for NBS PhD funding.
Okay.
And the first question was?
It was about the dependence of the green economy on voluntary work.
It comes back to the question on expenditure. If they don't have money and they have to do this and they have very little money, they can only do that project with volunteers. But if we were to have a better track on the expenditure and emphasize the importance both for education of this expenditure, but also for the economy, I think people will realize that, okay, you have to put more money in NBS projects so that they can generate real employment, formal employment, rather than requesting volunteers.
Thank you.
If I may just add something there, because I think it's important related to expenditure on your question also. I think we need more impact assessment. And when it comes to education, it's very complicated because most of what we do it's not tangible. So it's to measure the result of education is not easy. But still we can have we can try and we've got data. So when it comes to education, it's about learning. What basically, when you go through any sort of education system, whatever level, you're supposed to learn something. And that learning is supposed to have an impact, of course, on who you are. So the first thing I would suggest is to stop talking about skills. I'm sorry, because I'm European Commission, I should not say that but we should talk about competences. Yeah. Skill is part of the competences. So it's very important, but it's just a part of the rest. And then when you use the word skills, immediately you just think about job as if education was something different, when in fact the very foundation of the skills or competences you got to promote for your job comes anyway from a very early age on through the world education system. So we need that. And we need impact assessment, as I was saying before, which is not easy. We need to know concretely how what we're doing has an impact on the learner. We are still struggling with that a lot. And I will just give you an example and then I will stop. I was recently in a very interesting seminar in Lyon. We had a lot of teachers with us and a lot of inspectors from the education ministry in France. And I was with my good friend, David Wilgenbus, who is the director of the Office for Climate Education. And the guy is a scientist because what they're trying to do is to turn science, on hard data coming from IPCC, to turn that into something which is digestible for education, which is a very good job to do. And they're doing an excellent job. And I was saying something that didn't please a lot of people in the room, but is very true. He said, okay, we can auto-congratulate ourselves and be on that auto-satisfaction sort of game, saying, okay, oh, we've greened our curricula, as you said. That's important. And by the way, what you said is super important, is that we got to green the curricula and to update the curricula frequently, and to maybe also to open the contributors to the design of the curricula, but that's another story. So we're saying, say, good, that's good. We are greening the curricula. I've shown before that most of the education system in Europe, at least, which is not the case at global level, we have curricula that are tackling the issue of sustainability. Fine. But does that change the behaviors of the learners? And we've got data on studies that show that's not the case. So you see, again, let's focus on what works and the impact of what we're doing, which is also an invitation coming from the Dragon report for what we have, the policies we put in place. But I think there's a lot to learn there, which has an impact on its expenditures.
I think this was an amazing wrap up of this panel discussion. Thanks a lot, Remo, also for that, because you managed to link back to the education topic. And I think we could close for now this first discussion. I would ask you to go back to the feed and then invite Eleonora, right? Eleonora Lake. Forgot how to speak her.
La
Capituta, great. So Eleonora La Capituta is our partner in NBS EduWORLD from PPMI, and PPMI role is mainly working on the policy field, and towards the end of the project, establish some policy recommendations. So we are using this space now to get these expert discussions for inputs for those policy recommendations that will be coming from PPMI will be then integrating. So I invited Leonora to present a little of this work. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot to introduce you. Let me just first introduce Leonora better. She's a researcher at the Public Policy and Management Institute, PPMI, and Kaunas Technology University. She conducts research that informs EU policy at the intersection of sustainable development and education, and specializes in projects on learning for sustainability, green skills, and nature-based solutions. And Eleonora also has a background in the public sector, having led the integration of UN Sustainable Development Goals into the main long-term national strategies of Lithuania. She holds a Bachelor in Arts, International Relations degree from Brown University, USA, and has graduated as distinguished student of the Masters on Carbon Management from Edinburgh University. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you to all the speakers who came before me. It was very interesting to hear all these ideas. And I hope that will inform the next session that we will have. So I would like to, with my presentation, also kind of start off the more practical part of this whole event. So maybe if we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, thank you.
And the next one again. Paula already did a really good job in introducing the NBS EduWORLD project and kind of marking its main objective, but I'd also like to just add that kind of specify the goals and of the project and where me and my colleagues working at PPMI come in as partners to the project. So, you know, apart from facilitating synergies between education providers and NBS professionals, ensuring NBS education resources. There's also, yes, as we talked about, this is part of building a network. And of course, part of the network is policymakers. So if we go to the next slide, I thought it would be interesting to also show where our partners come from. So as you can see, we also have quite some partners who come from local governments. So for example, Almada Municipality, Offaly County Council. So there's this very interesting part to our project where we're actually seeing what's happening on the ground and the work of municipalities and what lessons can we draw from that to actually make sure that we can mainstream NBS through policy. So if we go to the next slide, I would also like to contextualize of what PPMI does in our part of the NBS EduWORLD project. So our ultimate goal is to develop policy recommendations, which will be ready by August 2025. But so in essence, we have just begun this journey in developing the recommendations, and we're currently at this stage of research where we're looking at all the different literature on NBS. We're holding interviews with stakeholders, and of course, we're looking at our own project experience and deliverables. So the research part is still ongoing and it's in process, but the brainstorming part, as you can see, where we're gathered here today for the Edu Summit, we have prepared a draft policy brief. It is not a finished recommendations collection, but it is something to kind of to have the conversation started, to start the discussion and see where we can build and expand and maybe disagree with some points. And the workshop session after the break will be dedicated to that. So we shared the policy brief with you last week. So if you haven't had the time to look at it, you will be able to also do that later on. For those who are sitting here in the audience, you can find the printed version of it. But I will also go briefly through the content of the policy brief. Later on, towards the spring, based on all this experience and the information that we gather, we will hold policy learning sessions, which will be targeted towards policymakers of different levels across different policy domains. So you will also, all participants will receive an invitation to participate in those policy learning sessions. And they will be like the final step in forming us in our policy recommendation development in August. So this is the context for this task and why we're holding this workshop today. So if we can go to the next slide. So yeah, this was the policy brief that was shared with you. Next slide, please. And it basically has 3 sections that are, we try to find connections with what our speakers were talking about today. So they're also sectioned accordingly. The first one talks about policy frameworks and also more of a national level policy. The second section speaks of green skills for green jobs. And then the third one is more on the local level. What policy support can we have to actually encourage NBS education on the ground? So yes, as I said, they will be integrated into the policy recommendations. We can go to the next slide and next slide. So with this section and the policy brief, we're trying to ask how can we mainstream NBS education through integrating it into national policy frameworks. Next slide. So a lot of these points that are discussed in this draft policy brief have already been presented by speakers. So as Chimir was saying, the council recommendation on learning for the green transition, wonderful document. I would say not even that boring, quite exciting. And I would really, again, recommend for everyone who hasn't looked at it to take a look. How can we also leverage other EU policy frameworks? Paola was talking about this, the biodiversity strategy, EU nature restoration law, and so on. EU funding programs, how do we take advantage of Horizon Europe? How do we take advantage of Erasmus+, and so on? Maybe to, I know we're running behind schedule, so I'll just go through this quite quick, but maybe the ones that are kind of more mysterious looking on the screen. What does mainstreaming relevant concepts mean? It means to actually also take the other relevant ideas like the whole school approach that Tremere was mentioning, or living labs, or concepts like transformative education, and actually finding those synergies and see where we can bring those terms together and lay them down in national level education policy documents and the curricula. And of course, mainstreaming across other policy domains. So we heard examples like agriculture or health and so on. We can go to the next slide. And next slide. So green skills for green jobs. How do we align NBS education with the needs for green skills and jobs? So this also relates very well with what was already presented, valorization of skills. So how do we put a value on the skills? How do we use green comp? How do we actually assess students on those skills to show that these skills are valuable and that they matter? Because without the value, why would NBS education be valued? Continuing in valorization of labor, similarly topics of decent work, questions of volunteering. How do we combine volunteering that should be also seen as a good thing, but also kind of fit in the terms of decent work. Reskilling programs for workers to actually meet those needs. And so, yeah, this was already very well discussed by Cornelia Madalena, so I'm not gonna go deep into this, and finally, what was also mentioned, how do we support teachers so that they can actually bring those skills to students? How do we give them the right resources, training programs, and other support? So finally, going to the last section, local strategies. So next slide. This section asks what local policy strategies can deliver NBS education on the ground. So here you will find in the policy brief a few points, one of them being investment in green educational infrastructure. Of course, that does not always mean that is NBS, but with other projects that happen on a municipal level, how can we also bring in NBS education into those questions and investing in NBS specifically? How do we have calls for proposals and competitions for education institutions or community projects to actually fund NBS projects? How do we support intersectoral collaboration? And maybe the one that's also more mysterious on the screen is the regional customization. So how do we actually have NBS education correspond to the local context and not, kind of apply equally all across Europe? We need NBS education that actually corresponds to what the local communities care about, their local ecosystems. So there's also suggestions on how we can achieve that. So I ran through this very quickly, but basically, just maybe also for the audience online, for the upcoming session, I would like to emphasize that we don't have to be all policymakers to actually make these recommendations. So we're very interested in having all different perspectives of people who are working as educators, people who are NBS experts, to see from their point of view what could best support their work and what they're doing. So yes, this is the policy brief. Again, just as a first step and a basis for discussion. And we will be very happy to integrate all the ideas that we hear today and share with you the final product in 10 months. Thank you.
Leonora, to bring us the core parts of the core components of the policy brief that is being drafted. So the idea is now that we were going to have a coffee break, and then we will reconvene to spread on those 3 points of the policy brief. So 3 breakout rooms. Perhaps you have the slide on that to support us. Me to for the next slide. Yeah. So we'll be dividing in 3 breakout rooms. 2 will remain on this room, and the third one will be there on the small meeting room we have in this Eclate venue, let's say. For the group 1, integrating NBS education into policy frameworks, we'll have Simon reporting there. Perhaps Paula, if you would like to join this group as well. And then you feel free to join which group you want. just saying who will be kind of hosting you there. So Simon together with Paula for the second group, Skilling Up for Green Jobs and the Future of Work. We'll have Connor there, hosting you there, along with Cornelia, if you are available for that, thanks. And for the third group, Local Strategies for NBS Education, Green Policies and Community Empowerment, we'd have Leonora reporting, hosting you together with Timon Podron. And then, yeah. And then the idea we would do like a World Cafe. So the first half an hour, let's say, you will stay in your group. And we will have like 2 rounds of 15 minutes to visit the other groups and to contribute with the discussion there. So how long would be the
20 minutes?
Okay.
For the coffee?
So we have now a 20 minutes break.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. And yeah, we hope the online audience remains there for the breakout rooms groups. I think we would be really good to hear also your inputs on that. And again to the online audience as well. So let's reconvene here. So we skip the, as I mentioned to you, we are skipping the World Cup dynamics, and we will now share the discussion in the assembly format or open format. So we will extend a little bit this part that we can have enough time to give feedback to each other. So for now, I will invite the first group that was discussing on integrating NBS education into policy frameworks and beyond, as I could. Yeah. Please, Simon, to report. And just one operational thing. Hello.
If we could have everyone potentially.
Yeah. If you want to have a question or a comment to the group that is presenting, I ask you to come to the front that our online audience can hear you well. Thanks.
How much time do I have to wrap up? In 5 minutes?
Yeah, so yeah, 5 minutes should be enough, at least. Yeah.
Perfect. So we had a very fruitful discussion within breakout group number 1. So we discussed about the policy frameworks, and the first guiding question was about the obstacles and the barriers that we face. So we had a reminder that education is actually an exclusive competence of member states, and that we should always bear that in our minds, and that shared competencies would be easier to foster NBS education and to mainstream it as well. So how to open the silos? It's sometimes also hard to find the connections between theory and practice, and between the companies and the teachers. And so one way to overcome this would be to promote the vocational trainings, to promote such networks that could facilitate the dialogues between the companies and between also the teachers. But how to transpose it as well at the EU level? I'm not sure we had the definitive answer to this question, but it was part of the reflections. Then teachers, they need support as well from the school administrations, but also from the ministries. And so they need a broader support, and they cannot act as well by themselves. Establishing a community via EU-funded projects has been identified as a key to really kick off this kind of integration of NBS education and to mainstream it. So we have such projects like NBS EduWORLD, but others as well. And this can be supported via fundings from the EU, but also from the companies and from other stakeholders. And so this was also an important part of the discussions. Then we emphasize the need that quick actions are needed, and that there are tremendous opportunities for NBS, and also to include scientists as well in vocational training, and not to leave them apart, and not to have them separated with the school and other education institutions and activities. Other policies as well included in the European Green Deal could be utilized as well to mainstream NBS and promote NBS education. The Green Comp framework was also highlighted as a key, but there is still a lack of knowledge around it. And so promoting it would be very important as well. Then there have been many things written down, so it's hard to find what to highlight.
Need to rush.
Yeah, thanks. Another important aspect was about the funding mechanisms. There has been some fruitful partnerships between different EU-funded programs, such as Erasmus+, Research and Innovation. And the research and innovation projects, they act more like partners, let's say. They plant and then it develops, but then it needs to be sustainably financed and to be self-sufficient. So we cannot exclusively rely on this kind of funding as well. And that's where comes the interest from also private companies or other stakeholders to then step in and to then replace the funding scheme. And please, the fellow colleagues from the breakout group number 1, if I forget something, please feel free to interact. Then there has been also another barrier, which was about the teachers. Sometimes they don't know who to reach to. They don't know. They sometimes plant the wrong trees because they lack of knowledge about the local areas. And so here the importance of the local level, for example, to try to find synergies with the cities, the municipalities, and their services of environment to strongly collaborate, and not only like the education department to support the teachers in also mainstreaming and implementing nature-based solutions. Teacher training is also a key because a lot of them don't really know what NBS are. And so this has been identified as a key priority as well. Also in companies, it's not only the teachers that need trainings, but also within the companies. Yes, the importance of different tools as well. That was an input from the TNC colleagues with how also to reach the young peoples, so through the comics, for example, and how to then gather all this kind of resources, materials that can help mainstream and support NBS education. Yes, I think that's it for this. And then there is also the importance of local and regional regulations. We had the example that in France, it's very hard to enter the schools. It's very like closed. And so in these kind of situations, it's very hard to have the schools as a hub for the community. And so we need to take also this into account. And then changing the mindset is also an important part. I really like one quote from one of our discussion is part of being a kid is being dirty. And maybe part also of being, I don't know, parent or being teacher or being part of the education administration is also to accept this and to then not, I don't know, like to overcome this mental barrier that, oh, if we have some schoolyards that are not only filled with concrete, then there will be dirty, then there will be disease, then there will be injuries, etc. And it's also about changing this. Yes, it's a talkative image. I like that. And then what do we have? It's almost done. Yes, another reflection was about which incentives can we use? And the biodiversity or carbon credits could be good opportunities to channel the investments. So this is something that we need to keep in mind as well. And for advocacy, it would remain a wishful thinking to have advocacy strategies that are disconnected from the very local situations. And it's bound to fail if it's not included the local concerns of people. And so the key here for successful advocacy strategies is to find the right intermediary organizations to have these local messages then bring up to the right places. That's it.
Oh. Yeah, we should now have the inputs to this discussion from the breakout groups that happen online on the same topic. Do you think they heard us? Yeah.
There is a question from Iselin, but I'm not sure they're allowed to speak.
Maybe it's this, yeah.
Yes.
It isn't in the room.
Okay, yes, great, thanks. Now I can speak. Let me also put on the camera if it works. Yeah. Hello. Hi. Nice to meet you all. Very interesting to hear your reflections from the discussion group that you had in person. So I will also just build on top of that and summarize some of the thoughts that we were discussing. We also put some of them already in the Padlet, so you can also find them there afterwards. So I think the first question about the different obstacles and challenges, we had a number of points. So we discussed the lack of awareness of NBS itself, which is a challenge, inadequate institutional capacity and funding, lack of training, a siloed approach to policy areas, and lack of explicit mentioning and of NBS in curricula and educational strategies. And also we discussed different ways to kind of overcome some of these challenges and how to tackle some of them. And I think one of our kind of main conclusions is that although we were in the policy group, we kind of concluded that we have to work a lot locally to mobilize and spread NBS, and that it's a lot about activizing the local community, and also using some more innovative and creative ways of linking NBS to different policy areas, like using sports and culture as a way to disseminate NBS, and working with local communities through sports clubs and trainers. So I think this was of course influenced because we had Joao Pedro Jorge, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing correct, is working with another project that is doing this a lot. So he had very interesting comments and reflections from that work. And also we had Faisa Slehat, who also is working in the MENA region with MBS, and also had a lot of reflections on the challenges that they're going through and different solutions. So we were discussing a lot about more local approaches and working with community and collaborative approaches across different education and different policy fields, linking to work on sustainable development goals and sports and cultures. And then we also discussed a little bit advocacy itself and like how we can work better to communicate and spread awareness about NBS. So we spoke about the need for simple and clear language, simplifying the important issues, and also tailoring our information to the relevant audiences, and working a bit long term with having structured trainings in the communities. We also spoke about how education itself is an advocacy strategy that needs to be used much more also at the policy level. And we also spoke a little bit about the challenge itself of writing policy messages that are relevant to all kind of stakeholders, but also practical, and that maybe there needs to be more attention in policy recommendations to this balance between theory or like say more conceptual issues, but also balanced with more practical and technical bullet point kind of ideas that different stakeholders can very easily adopt and take into practice. And let's see if there was anything else. We spoke about involving academic institutions, and also focusing on vocational education and training as some specific key fields that are very important for inspiring careers in NBS, and also later on for connecting NBS to different fields, because VAT and academic institutions can help to link NBS to different fields such as agriculture, forestry, water management, etc. And I think that was more or less it. We also noted a lot of different relevant policy documents that we also put up on the Padlet. And I think that was what we discussed. If anyone else from the group wants to compliment, then feel free. Otherwise, it was a really good discussion, and thank you all for joining the discussion in the group.
Let's wait some seconds to see if anyone else in the group would like to
I
react.
think on the same topic, there was also Miriam.
Miriam,
There was another
she had raised her hand.
She had raised her hand.
Yeah.
Yes, she does.
She should have the mic.
You should.
Yes, I think you can hear me. Perfect. Good morning, everyone. So we had the same topic, how to integrate NBS education into policy. Yeah, we were another group, and I think our conversation was also very engaging. We discussed how to integrate it into policy and also into the curriculum. We started talking about the many challenges that there are to this. One of them is that NBS, it's still a quite new concept. And teachers, as Celine and I think Simone before, they said that teachers need training for this. And we said that not only about content, but also on how to effectively engage the students and really use emotional, hands-on and more place-based pedagogies. We also said that we cannot leave this to on the shoulders of some motivated teachers. We need the whole school behind to really be able to learn about nature in nature as much as possible. And there are still some barriers to this. So we agreed that we need to first define the concepts to be able to translate them into the curriculum. And one of the tools that can help to achieve this is GreenCom. Now, GreenCom, it's a text that it's, although it's quite concrete, we need to make it even more. We need to match it and translate it to the local needs. It needs to be specific for the teachers to really embrace it. We also discussed about what can be done at the EU level. And we had a very interesting conversation about how there's been a lot of focus on digital literacy and how we should take this momentum to really push for the twin transition. So everything that we are investing in researching about EA, talking about EA or other types of technology, we need to use it because both technology and green competences are very transversal. And if we could ask for more efforts or more investment from the EU, we were discussing in the room that it should be leading to more time for teachers to implement holistic approaches to really bring STEM education to solve these issues, because NBS and STEM education are very much related. And then finally, we discussed other policy actions that we could do. We had 2 educators in the room and also someone that was doing a mapping of different curriculums in Latin America. So thanks to this great insight, we said that we need to talk with the local policy level. So bring the students to really talk with the mayor, bring the industry to the classroom to really involve the local actors to discuss with the municipality. We even had some ideas of how, well, carbon footprint, it's something that it's out there interesting for industry. So why not start the conversation of the connection between offset in schools and industry. And one last thing that we said is that bringing NBS into the local context should also transform into talking about social policies. NBS is transversal, it's everywhere, and we should show the benefits to the elderly people or to people with special needs. So we need to bring NBS closer to other domains. So yeah, if someone else from the room, because we had colleagues from European Schoolnet, Chiara, we had Bernardo from Latin America, and Anna, early childhood educator, and Kyriaki, primary educator. So if I'm missing something, please go ahead. Otherwise, I would also like to thank you for a very engaging conversation. And back to the plenary, where I think also many people had a great exchange. Thank you.
Thanks, Miriam, and for all the online participants for this very engaging conversation. And then would open to both plenaries of the online and also here on site, let's say in person. for additional comments you might have for this discussion. I know we are short on time, but just to leave some space for that. Yes, Kelly, please.
I just wanted to quickly chime in that we spoke a lot about additional co-benefits that could be brought into this conversation that NBS can bring. So, for example, when we're talking about other community goals, such as mental health or sense of place or sense of belonging, you know, NBS education can really address these as well, inside the classroom and outside of the classroom. And so that's a really important aspect of nature that we need to consider when we're talking about NBS education. So we had a lot of really, really interesting discussions in our group, but I just wanted to bring that for a potential wider discussion. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Kelly. I do see that if we would have the time and the energy, we could stay like discussing this topic for a very long time, but unfortunately, I think we should then now jump for the next group. How about we now? No, yeah, let's. So thanks, Simon. Thanks everyone that participated in this group. Paula as well for supporting this facilitation. So the second group was the skills, right? The green skills. This table 2, yeah. So Connor.
You can sit in one of the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi everyone. Yeah, so it was myself, Anna, Marlena, and Bettina on our group, and it all got a little bit dark, to be honest. But then we sort of we came out of it at the end, so it was okay. So really, what we were talking about was obviously skills development, what's needed at all different levels, and we kind of jumped straight into it. We're trying to think of where are NBS now. Bettina had a great point about thinking of NBS in terms of the life cycle, the design, the implementation, the maintenance, and then we had a discussion around where those key elements are, how long, and where the money is going to be spent on NBS. So what skills are needed there. And then we were talking about job titles and going back to those skills and linking planners, engineers. Are you going to have green planners, green engineers, or is everybody kind of going to stay the same but have different skills, and how all of this would work? And it was kind of a bit of a general roundabout conversation until we got a little bit more into it, and we were talking about specifics in terms of why this needs to happen. Why isn't it just happening organically? And we started talking about the big pushback and, you know, the tractor protests out here a couple of months ago. In my country, in Ireland, we have a lot of farmers who are very upset, and peat, mining, and all the rest of it. All of these major industries are being really impacted by this area. And we sort of came back to, we actually know how this can work, but we haven't translated why it should work and given these people a reason to make that transition. And in terms of education, that's probably where we should be starting. And sometimes I think in summary, sometimes the policy or the education, we always have a sort of a happy clappy view on things, and maybe calling the problems out, and you know, if you're taking away my money and my income, you need to give me a pretty good reason how you're going to replace it, and think that through before you go ahead and do that. So that's kind of what we were talking about. In terms of rural areas, obviously it's going to be about job creation, but I think for NBS as well, we often talk about urban NBS and, you know, our cities, and that's really important. But actually where the NBS are going to be implemented at scale is going to be your rural and coastal areas. So probably the job creation is more going to happen in those areas as well. That message needs to be absolutely made very clear. It needs to be clear that there are low, middling, and high income jobs for NBS as well. And going back again, TNOC got a call out about this idea of including journalists or bringing in novel ways of communication, and we need to explain our ideas to the journalists so they can get it out there. And no, the point is that we as educators need to learn from the journalists actually in terms of how they're translating these messages and get that clear from the start. We talked a lot about all the different policies, which I think the other groups have already explained really well. And why we need green skills, green jobs are going to lead to better pay, a little bit more on nature restoration plans, the Green Deal and all the rest of it. And basically, because over the next few years, those big policy changes are going to have an impact, governments are going to be mandated to make these changes. Companies in their reporting are going to have to look at their impact on climate, the environment, biodiversity, NBS and all the rest. They will be looking for these jobs, but that might take a little bit of time. They're going to be demanding that people are skilled in these spaces, and we actually are going to need to meet that demand now. And that's why the education, the skills are so important in each of those areas in a very general way. And that was pretty much it. I'm sorry if I mongreled your ideas terribly, but please feel free to jump in. Yeah, all good? Great.
Thanks a lot. I thought you wanted to say something more before I said something. Okay. And from the online audience who was discussing this topic?
Nobody.
Say that.
And microphone.
I think he has his mic. Olivia, perhaps you can unmute yourself, because from our side you are able to use your mic.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we worked on the third topic. The third topic on room 3, local strategy for NBS education, green policies and community empowerment. Yes. So first of all, we've thought about how can municipality help out local education practice. So we've got a few examples from Belgium and from Germany and also from France, where they have a participatory budget for greening schools in Paris. We also have ideas where municipality could organize visits of NBS projects for school kids in order to get them to better understand what's going on. Invite kids in workshops, so ask them how they would like to have their schools to be a better, greener environment, and get ideas from them in order to implement these projects. And also from Cyprus, the mayor invited all the school children and all the school headmaster to join in together forces around NBSs in order to create a link between them. On the second subject, so how can we create connections between intersectoral collaboration for NBS education at a local level? So we've got a great example from Germany, where school kids are invited once a year to do a insect survey within the university. And apparently that's working very well, and I've provided the link to that. There's also a very good example from Belgium, where a toolkit has been created to assess, I think, river biodiversity by creating a open hardware microscope. If I'm correct, I think I provided a link to that as well. And also the example from France, one of our app is Sauvage de Maru, where school kids and citizens are being helped by university students to do a biodiversity survey within the city. And on the third question, so how can we link up mental health and the health community to the NBSs? We had a very good, didn't have much time, but we had a very good example again from Belgium, where the project One Aqua Health came up, where they investigate the interconnections between ecosystem health and human well-being with AI-assisted tool, and I provided a link for that as well. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Thanks a lot, Olivia. Does anyone from your group wants to comment as well? It was great to hear because I think from across the group's presentation, we have heard a lot about embeddedness. So it was very nice that your presentation brought real cases to illustrate possibilities.
Yes. And may I mention one of our work package, we have to provide a platform that showcase before and after NBSs. So I'm here asking you all to give us examples of pictures where NBSs have been implemented so I can put them up on the platform as before and after, please.
Have you heard? Yeah.
If you do have that.
Okay. There is a comment from Mariana. Would you like to read? Or?
Yes, I can read it. So not able to contribute due to technical issues, blah, blah, blah. Regaining skills to get NBS jobs. Just wanted to add that in addition to all that was said. The practical experience is extremely valued by the employers. I believe from experience that they don't understand, the employers, that this is something very new and there are not a lot of experienced people out there. So in my view, providing the opportunity for people to join existing projects to gain practical experience is of utmost importance.
Thanks, Mariana. Is that contribution, I think, for the group too, right? For the table on skills.
Yes.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for trying to solve this technical issue by sending us this wrap up of your session. Then I will invite the in-person group 3 to present findings and discussions.
I will use my notes on the computer. I think we're quite well positioned to wrap this up because I think in many ways we had a bit of a meta conversation about what recommendations should even look like or do. But to begin with, maybe I think we started our conversation on how do we not reinvent the wheel and how do we actually mainstream and leverage all that already exists to not do double work. And so I think this also very well ties in what Iselin was saying, that there's, I believe, Iselin's a group for a need for simple and clear language. And we were saying that, of course, although teachers do need the training and many teachers don't know what NBS is, many teachers actually are already doing what we could call nature-based solutions, but they don't even know it themselves yet. So it's really about how do we connect to people who are already doing these things on the ground as well, or how do we, for example, on a municipal level, for example, departments that might be working on mobility issues or health issues or other topics that aren't directly NBS education, how do we show them that this should matter to them as well? So it's really about how to take what already exists and to see what we can make of that to make nature-based solutions education more broad and more well-known. We were also talking about having boards on the municipal level to include all these different people working on different topics on towards this goal. And one more thing on the topic of not on time and teachers and just kind of the fact that teachers already have so much work to do. So yes, again, tying it back to what they're already doing and seeing how we can encourage and incentivize them to go more towards the NBS education path. And then, yeah, talking more broadly about how do we communicate these recommendations. And me and my colleagues have this task ahead of us for the next 10 months. And it really is important to us that it doesn't end up being, a long document that no one will ever see or actually make use of. So we were talking about how can we section the recommendations to really target the different audiences. So how do we address municipalities? How do we address national level policymakers? How do we even address EU level policymakers who might not all be aware of how to use the same concepts and really push for NBS education. We were talking about how we can have different sections of the recommendation, maybe a separate section of the recommendations that brings out the more urgent priorities of what can be done. So these very, like low-hanging fruits that policymakers can implement to have that highest impact to begin with. And then we came back to the idea of data and the lack of data, and how do we really provide that evidence as well in our recommendations, and how we might need to also indicate what data is lacking and what research needs to be done. So, but I also really liked one of our group members added that lack of evidence or data should never be an impediment to action. So, keeping that balance of looking for data, but not using that as an excuse to not move ahead. Yes. So I think that would be it for our session, but just want to thank the members of the group for really having this very fruitful conversation, because especially for us compiling the recommendations, it's very good to take a step back and to think about how we communicate them and how they can reach the target audience. If anyone of our group would like to add something.
Well done, Elena. Well done.
Right. Thank you.
I would also invite Paula to call our wrapping up, not really wrapping up, but here's some. It was Oliver. Is there any other group that discussed also this third topic beside Oliver?
Yeah, our group did.
Sorry, Kelly.
Oh, that's okay. I thought that was a really great wrap up, and we actually covered a few different topics. We talked about this, we spent a lot of time on intersectoral collaboration and how we could foster this, and we shared experiences from our different areas of expertise, and talking about how, sometimes an iterative approach is best, where you would pilot something to be able to show the benefit or the impact, and then bring that to a wider audience, and the importance of identifying an ambassador or an advocate in each area. So whether it's a school or a football club or, a municipality or something like that, where you can then have, like you were saying, this idea of teaching the teacher in that way, and being able to disseminate this NBS education in different sectors through these ambassadors or advocates is really important. This sounds a little bit off topic now from what you guys were just talking about, but also the idea of providing incentive, an incentive structure that is meaningful to the community, or a progressive incentive structure that was shared in our group, which I thought was really smart, whether it's bronze, silver, gold, but it's a very low threshold to reach this bronze level. But if you show increased interest or willingness to invest in this, you could, then be brought to the next level, et cetera. So I think that's really important, regardless if there is a financial incentive attached to that, but there could be a certification process or just a general label that could be applied cross-sectorally, which would be really important. We discussed a lot more. It was a great discussion, but I'll leave it at that so we can get on with the conclusion. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Kelly. Should I move on then? All right. I feel it's quite hard now to wrap up all those fruitful discussions that Eleonora mentioned. I will try to highlight what I felt that was coming across all of the groups at the same time, and also the points that would be perhaps some new highlights, and avoiding reinventing the wheel. It's not easy after that. But yeah, what I felt like in general across all the groups, there was this role of communication was coming very much, right? Like how to convey the message in a more simple way. I heard here in this group, there are multiple frameworks, not only the NBS concept that can come across quite complex for practitioners, teachers, and other publics that are related to the education field, but also the green comps and all other frameworks that can, the education for sustainability that can support or set the stage for training and the trainers, so to speak. So this message needs to be somehow simplified and better communicated. And I like very much when Connor brought that we as NBS experts, we also, and educators, we need to learn from the journalists and communicators. Like there is this, I normally like this bi-directional learning process, right? So yes, we should also talk to them about it, the situation, about the topic, but we also should learn some new methods, for example, the comics, the creative methods. I also understood, and I found quite interesting, when you bring like using creative methods or sports as a way not only to communicate better, but also to break silos, to break the policy silos as well. So when you use the sports and culture, maybe you can engage at municipality level, but also in other governance levels, engage with different policy fields as well. So it's quite interesting to hear that. I heard changing or work on the mindset. I think I heard on the 3 groups, although Connor didn't bring here, and I was like, oh, I cannot say this anymore. And yeah, let me see. Also, I found interesting that you were also clear when we talk about policy, education, and consistent and long-term initiatives that needs to go beyond the EU, what we are used to on the EU funds, that you need something more consistent, more robust, and perhaps this could come from the private sector, although we still have a very hard time to convince the private sector. And like, this is a message that comes across not only when we talk about NBS, it's not appearing in only education, it's appearing everywhere, right? And implementation. Always we say, well, wow, we need more fundings, we need to involve the private sector. And then I think then Table 2 brings this idea of, well, we need to find a selling point. We need to find also what is the short benefit. I think he used a different expression.
Short term, long term.
Yeah, that we can have the buy-in also of the private sector, because there are also these different scales where they operate. And not only the private sector in terms of the funding partner, but also as the different industries, right? When we talk about farmers, we talk about fishers. So these people that they hear that they should do, but why they should do, right? We brought this as well. So I think this somehow also dialogues with key barriers that you found in different groups. I'm afraid I just talk a lot. So yeah, perhaps I would leave it here. And a big thank you for all you that are here in person, and as well for the online audience to stay until now. It was really amazing to have you there, and also hear your feedback, your comments, your insights was bringing a lot to our discussion as well. Now I would pass the floor to Eleonora to talk a little bit on how this input you gave to us will be embedded into NBS EduWORLD work, and later to Paula for the final remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla, for a great moderation and the wrap up. I think I already kind of discussed how we're going to use this, and then in the next 10 months, we will have the policy recommendations ready. But one thing that I can say for sure is that we have a lot of work to do now. I think I was very, very impressed and very inspired today to hear all these ideas. And it's just going to be a question of how to systematize and synthesize everything and bring everything together. So I just also want to encourage everyone to participate in our policy learning sessions closer to spring. We will make sure to get that information to you. And also, if you have any ideas or if you encounter anything that might be useful for policy recommendations, please don't hesitate to reach out at my email, which I believe will be at the on the presentations and on the maybe agenda. So feel free to reach out. And yeah, once again,
Sorry, Eleonora, I think something we didn't tackle here at this table is something regarding dissemination of the policy recommendations. So I understood that you are going to do that at the very end of the project.
Yes.
And I would recommend to do that earlier than the end of the project, and maybe to capitalize on what we said today, having less recommendations earlier and a proper dissemination plan, even targeting key policy events where you can use it for policymakers and other events for the different other target groups. Because otherwise it would be a pity that the project end and the paper as well.
Yeah, very, very good point. I did forget to mention that, but I've noted that indeed we'll try to find synergies with different events and ways to disseminate. And the suggestion we had that in mind to maybe finish this earlier and have shorter policy briefs that we can disseminate more easily and maybe to specific target groups. So thank you for that. Very, very good point. And yeah, in general, also for everyone online, feel free to become part of the NBS EduWORLD community and follow our subsequent events and deliverables. And you can find us on LinkedIn and the NBS EduWORLD website.
So, Paula, please.
Yes, so it's quite challenging to close an event like this, especially because I'm not an education expert, and I'm actually not even an NBS expert. I'm just an NBS policy officer, and I will get back to what that means in practice later on. But I wanted to share maybe a few reflections. One is that when we think of the goals of the European Green Deal, of transformative change, of a nature positive future, for me, the foundational discussion is how do we reconnect to nature? Because we were saying in our group that one of the interesting things that we have to acknowledge with ourselves in the first place is that we have literally lost touch with nature. The nature that we know is often very humanized, very artificial. Sometimes we don't even know how to touch an animal or a plant, or if we should touch an animal or a plant. So again, this is the foundational discussion. How do we get back to being part of nature fully, instead of seeing ourselves as completely separate and detached from nature, and eliminating the physical barriers that we have, especially in cities, between the human space and the natural space, and how we relearn how to share space. Another reflection is linked to the ILO report, and we should be better collectively at ensuring that teachers actually have decent working conditions, because I personally feel it's not always the case. And we ask a lot of them, really a lot. We are today asking a lot of them. And we should pay more attention to the conditions in which they work. And then partly linked to that and to the financial flows, the investment, there is actually an interesting workshop going on this morning on the nature positive economy. And it seems something very far away from what we're discussing here today, but it's not, because it's all about unlocking financial flows, getting the investment where it's needed. We know that the next commission is going to be a lot about competitiveness. How do we ride this wave and unlock financial flows for NBS in general, for NBS education in particular? How we can take advantage of schemes like the carbon credits, the future biodiversity or nature credits, if they're ever going to materialize. How do we get our hand on that? How do we use them to build this nature positive economy, nature positive society, and nature positive culture that we need so badly to simply survive on this planet with a minimum level of human well-being? And then I go back to my work, because my work is literally to plant seeds, NBS seeds in Horizon Europe. This is a fundamental part of what I do is planting seeds in the various Horizon Europe topics to try and bring funding to NBS. But I just plant the seed. Then the NBS practitioners, the NBS educators, and this whole community is the community of gardeners that is going to, see these seeds bloom into flowers. So this is a way to say thank you to this community and just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing and confirm that if we're putting funding into these projects, it's because we believe they are important and we cannot wait to see them, fully in bloom. And that's all. Thank you very much for being here today.
Do you want to?
Yes. So there is, to finish and to conclude properly, there is a satisfaction interaction on Menti. So there is a QR code for you to scan, and it's basically about 3-5 questions about your feedback. What can be improved? What has worked? So people online have already started to answer it, and perhaps Adri, you can click on the 2 words satisfaction interactions, and it shall lead you to the Menti page so that we can see the results.
Do you have the number as well? Sometimes it's easier to put the number instead of scanning.
For
the people that are more.
I have also the number. Oh.
The online are very fast on that.
You all are able to see the results?
Yes,
we can see them.
The code is 29 15.
Sorry, can you repeat?
29 15 65 21.
Yes. It will only take between 2 to 5 minutes, depending if you're fast or not.
It's 5 minutes to be able to assess later, and then it's fast. Thanks for your feedback, Sylvia. I'm talking to the online person.
Number slowly growing. And is it possible to change also the slides, Adri?
Yeah, maybe you can change.
So people seem satisfied by the format and also by the content. We have many thoughts. A lot of them begins with congratulations.
One comment very down to bring more policymakers to the table, and that they appreciated the online participation. Also, I think it worked really well.
Yes, bring more policymakers to the table as well.
Perhaps in addition, as some open questions, also as some harvested answers to knowledge. Yes.
And thanks for sharing these thoughts, because it will then serve us for the future meetings. So, yeah. And then 2 slides to finish, Adri. We have a cloud.
Hope.
Yeah. So in a word, what was the key takeaways from this event for you? We have hope, collaboration, complexity. Yes, but complex. Communication, conversations, inspiring, enthusiasm. urgent recommendations. Yes. Concept matters. And then we have a last slide to share. Any closing word to describe the event that you would like to share with us?
Long what?
Long road ahead.
Sam.
Keep us informed. We will keep you informed.
Yes. Thanks, congrats, well done, wonderful, encouraging.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now for a little lunch and some more networking. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks everyone. Like learning to be here, influencer. Thanks for your presence. It was really good. We had really great contributions from the online participants, and it worked very well. Hope to see you again in the next NBS EduWORLD event.
Thank you all. We're going to close the meeting now.
Thanks, Adri.
Bye.